Today seemed like a good day to revamp one of my old, like very old, over 2 years old, and for how young my channel was back then, very old video on the Cosmere reading order that I recommend. A bunch of my friends were asking me, hey, I just saw this Kickstarter, I kind of have FOMO, you told me to read this years ago, where should I start? And it's got us into this long conversation, and I was just like, I need to make a video. Obviously, I have a lot of opinions, and it's been a while. Lots of people make these videos. I am not the first, I won't be the last. Lots of people have different opinions. We all come into Sanderson's works from different angles. There is no right answer. This is just going to be my suggestion, and I will, as I go through the series, talk about where I think are the pros and cons of jumping in at certain points, etc., in terms of wanting to read the Cosmere for the Cosmere or just wanting to get to know Sanderson's writing as a new person reading his works, okay? We're going to try and go at it from that approach. Briefly, the Cosmere is Sanderson's multiverse. It's basically, these all happen on different planets in a universe called the Cosmere, which means that their magic systems are different, but also kind of connected, and means that people can cross over from books to books. So far, in quotes, because we're kind of getting past this so far point a little bit in one of the newer releases, things have been isolated. Stories are isolated from each other. You could, in theory, pick up any of the world books and you'll be fine. You don't need to know the broader context to have a good time. That is starting to change a little bit in one of the series, and I'll get to that. But for the most part, as I talk about all these series, the general rule I have for recommending books by any author that I like is, if the story intrigues you, that's the one you pick up. Pick up the one that has you excited. I'll talk about the pros and cons of starting where depending on what your intentions are, what your goals are, but ignore me if you find a book that you were just like, oh, that sounds so cool. Like, feel free. I am not the arbiter of truth, as Alan would say. Go ahead. So, my too long, didn't want to watch response is publication order. That's how I read it. Like, if you want to know, Angela, how did you read the Cosmere? I read it in publication order. I didn't have a choice. I started reading Sanderson in 2005, and in 2005 there was one book. So that's just how it is. I'm not saying that you have to do that, especially when you get to the Stormlight, Mistborn Era 2, swapping back and forth section. But I will say, if you're like, I don't want to be spoiled for anything when things are Easter egged or revealed, what's the order? Kind of like when people say you could read Live Ship before Farseer, but technically one spoils the other or something. I say publication order. You really cannot be spoiled because that's how we all experienced it who were reading them as they came out. But like I said, I'll get into all of them specifically, starting with Elantris, my baby, the book I defend the most in many Discord chats. Elantris is the story of a fallen city that used to be full of magic, and then one day it is a curse. People no longer have magic there. They are actually just numb zombies who are always in pain. One of our main characters becomes one of these people that live within Elantris that should have been blessed, but were actually then cursed. Another character is his betrothed, who actually ends up still being his wife even though they never meet, and she has to maneuver the politics of this new city where she was already an outcast in her hometown. And we have a priest coming from another land that is convinced that if he does not convert people here, they will not be saved. These are our perspectives. This is different from a lot of Sanderson's for a lot of reasons. One is, it's his debut. It's going to be clunkier for some people. For me, I just love it. I'm so nostalgic to this book. But in general, I hear complaints about the dialogue. This is not as magic system focused. Sanderson is known for his magic system, Allomancy, his the Radiance in Stormlight Archive. Like, he's just known for these really cool magic systems with rules that are very close to, say, physics or things like that. This has rules, but it is not the focus of the story, the aeons that are looked at in this book. This is actually more your standard, like, what happened to this land and politics fantasy thing. So for people who maybe are not as used to hard magic systems, I think this is a good starting off point. I even give this to people who are new to fantasy, because in general, it is fantastical, but it's not so out there that people can't get used to it. I also think this is good to start with if you really are just like, no, I'm committed to Sanderson. I want to read everything in the Cosmere in order, and you want to see him grow as an author. It's better to start here, I think, than coming back here after you've read all of Stormlight and Mistborn Era 1, because you've then read him at his most edited, at his most experienced, and you're coming back to an earlier work that is still, in my opinion, very good, but it's one of his earliest works. That's just part of it. So those are some of my opinions on why you should start here. And also, Elantris is going to be very important in the Cosmere. Like, I'm excited to reread it because of some of its implications and other kind of crossover works. So it is one that if you end up caring about the Cosmere, you will probably have to read. So why not read it first? It is the one that I think, though, gets that and Mistborn Era 2 get kind of the most, like, negative responses from fans. And speaking of Mistborn, we'll now talk about the Mistborn trilogy. This is what was published next. This is one that I give to people who want to try out Brandon Sanderson, who are just like, is this the writer for me? Because I think it's pretty low commitment. Yes, it's a trilogy, but the first book's a standalone, essentially. So it's like a con artist, Ocean's 11, kind of taking over a kingdom, like you're trying to overthrow the empire sort of thing. So the plot is pretty accessible. People have experienced this plot before. It has an orphaned main character, chosen one. We have a mentor like Kelsier. Like, it's a cool book. It's really easy to give to people. I give it to people who love action movies, who love video games. They tend to really like it. And if you don't like it, you kind of know, okay, I don't really like how he world builds. I don't really love how he forms sentences. His character work is not for me. Like, if you don't like the Mistborn trilogy, that's not to say you might not like other books in his series, but it does a lot of the stuff that he does consistently. Like, this is how he writes most of the time. Like, I will say he's a little better at magic systems now. A lot of people make fun of the fact of how often he says push and pull on metals because allomancy is the metal magic of the Cosmere. But at the same time, like, it's really not that different, at least in terms of writing style. Like, if you read Mistborn Era 1 and you're like, the writing style is really not fun for me, I don't think that's going to improve for you. So that's why I think Mistborn Era 1's a great place to start if you're just like, I want to get to know this author. I want to see if he focuses on the stuff in fantasy that I care about. And it's also incredibly important for the Cosmere. So I generally say Elantris or Mistborn Era 1, but I wouldn't just, like, skip one of them. You have to just, like, pick one to go to. I frequently give one or the other to a friend depending on who I think they are as a reader. Next up is the other standalone, Warbreaker, and this is one that on the bookish internet many people recommend you read first, like several people. I don't think I disagree, it's just never been something I've done. I don't know why, but Warbreaker is a story about these two princesses. One of them ends up having to go into this arranged marriage that was meant to be for the other sister, and then the other sister's like, no, this was my life purpose, I must go save my sister, and that is the plot. It's very much a Beauty and the Beast-esque. At least that's how I've literally always thought of it since it came out in, like, I think it was 2009, 2008. Cannot quite remember. But this magic system has to do with breaths. So I said allomancy is the metal one. This one's breaths. So the more breaths you have, the more vibrant colors are and things like that. And basically the hierarchy system is based off breaths. And yeah, this one is definitely more political. I think it's pretty funny. This is a good book for figuring out, do you like Sanderson's humor? I think, especially for a standalone. And I do think this has good crossover appeal if, like, say you've been primarily reading young adult fantasy. I think this is a better crossover, I think, than Mistborn. I know Mistborn's the one that's actually published in young adult a lot of the times, but I think the pacing of Mistborn is pretty, like, clunky. Mistborn goes from, like, really slow to really fast quite often, and I think Warbreaker is just more what we expect from, like, a political monarchy YA fantasy, but with the Sanderson magic systems and twists. So, yeah. And Warbreaker, like, of the three I have mentioned, Warbreaker is essential. Okay, Cosmere reading. I mean, they all kind of are, but Warbreaker needs to be read before what I talk about next, at least eventually, if you care about Cosmere Easter eggs. If you don't care, then ignore me. Move on. But next up, we get to talk about both the Stormlight Archive and Mistborn Era 2, because they are being published, like, kind of in line with each other. So this, I don't think it matters if you commit to just reading all of one and then all of the other, or if you go back and forth in publication order. I have everything listed down below if you really want to do it that way. Feel free to peruse that. But Way of Kings came out, I believe, in 2010, and it was kind of the last book he wrote before doing a lot of Wheel of Time stuff. So we kind of had a hiatus for a while, until we got lucky, and this was, like, one of the first times he surprised us. Like, I know right now we're all in, like, oh my god, this Kickstarter mode, but the first time he surprised us, when he was like, hey guys, I was on a plane, and I wrote Alloy of Law. I know I'm going to be writing Wheel of Time for years, so sorry about, like, not writing your other series, but here's a book. And I was thrilled. I was ecstatic. So it's a very short one. But I'll first talk about the Stormlight Archive, which I do have a should you read video for this, where I'm very like, these are things you're going to find in it. It might work for you if you like this. It might not. But that, it's very much me not being a fangirl talking about the Stormlight Archive, because I am a Stormlight Archive fangirl. I really love that series. So this one, though, is the series where I was mentioning at the beginning, one of these series, like, technically you could read in isolation, but it's starting to get hard. It's the Stormlight Archive. So the Stormlight Archive is the big one. It's going to be 2 5-book arcs for a 10-book series total. And the first arc is going to be finished either in 2023 or 2024. Depends on when that book is finished. I'm hoping end of 2023, but sometimes things happen. Sometimes there's publishing problems. Who knows? But this is one where, especially with our most recent releases in Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, you for sure need to have read Warbreaker, maybe even Elantris, maybe even a bunch of the short stories and novellas. Like, it's kind of one of those things where there's a lot of mini crossovers now, and a lot of the complaints I had heard for Rhythm of War was for people who didn't care about the Cosmere. There was a lot of Cosmere-related connections that people weren't invested in or not seeing, and they were like, those are the things I loved about it. But I can see if you don't care about the Cosmere or don't know about the Cosmere, those things won't be as cool, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like we're getting to the point where, like, I guess technically you could watch Avengers Infinity War and Endgames on its own, technically, but does it make sense if you don't know any of the characters? Like, we're kind of getting to that point with the Stormlight Archive. But in general, if you read in publication order, you will be introduced to all of the things as they come up. I will say the latest I would recommend reading Warbreaker is after Way of Kings. That's my recommendation. And then to Mistborn Era 2, this is Mistborn Era 2. It is technically Mistborn Book 4, I think, on Goodreads. I would say that I would recommend reading Mistborn Era 1 before Mistborn Era 2. But I do think you could just read Mistborn Era 2 on its own, but it will spoil Mistborn Era 1. That's the thing. It's going to spoil it. It takes place 300 years after the events in the first trilogy. Another important thing to know, it is tonally different. It is a different subgenre of fantasy. It has different storytelling goals than the first trilogy. And that might be bad for you if you loved Mistborn Era 1 like me. I loved it. That is epic fantasy. This is more detective Western fantasy. I don't know. It's a different subgenre. It is way more lighthearted. It is way breezier. It's lighter. It's just lighter fare. I don't know how to explain it. And so if you don't like the new setting, if you don't like the new tone, if you don't like the new characters, I understand. This is for sure the one that really tells you who likes the humor of Sanderson and who does not. When people read this series, we find out who likes Sanderson's humor and who does not, because this makes or breaks people. I have a lot of fun with it. I think it's pretty quirky, but I can understand if for some people it's a bit too quirky. In this one, we follow Wax and Wayne, who are detectives, and they have to solve detective-y things, and they used to be in the West, but they moved back to the city because of stuff. And I'm actually really fuzzy on the specifics because I'm going to do a reread this year. So I'm pretty excited to re-experience this again. But it's a fun time. It actually does some really cool things with the original Mistborn magic system. And I can definitely see, based off Bands of Mourning, that important things are about to happen Cosmere level. Not just in the book, but there were some implications. And then that leads us to the last Mistborn thing I'll talk about, which is The Secrets of Mistborn, which is extremely polarizing in the Cosmere fandom, but you for sure should read that after Bands of Mourning. That's my professional opinion in terms of spoiling yourself to things. That's when you should read it. Now, in between Stormlight Archive and Mistborn Era 2, as these are being released, and the last Mistborn Era 2 book is coming out at the end of this year in 2022, we have some novellas and short fiction that are kind of important, but it doesn't really matter when you read them. I have them listed in their publication order down below if that is something you want to do. The first one I'll talk about is Emperor's Soul. I love this novella with all my heart. You can read this literally whenever, and it is really interesting in terms of thinking about the Cosmere magic system. It is one of the best works, both in terms of story and writing, but also in terms of explaining the Cosmere's magic system, not just Elantris's magic system, because this takes place on the world of Elantris, although it's kind of like saying, it takes place on the other side of the world, so it has nothing to do with our characters or the plot in Elantris, so you could read it before Elantris, you can read it after, you could read one and never read the other. They don't connect other than it's the same planet. So there are similar mechanisms to the magic system, but it's a different character, a different country, a different political atmosphere. Like, they do not intersect. I really love it. It's a fantastic novella. If you just only want to read one Sanderson, just read that one. It's fantastic. And then there are two others that, and all three of these are actually in the Arcanum Unbound. So I'll talk about this one now, because this one came out in 2016. So a little after Bands of Mourning as well, and it also includes The Secrets of Mistborn and Emperor's Soul and Edgedancer, which you definitely need to read all of the novellas in Stormlight Archive as if they are books. They are not book length. Don't get fooled by their pages. Their pages are actually novella length. So they're novella size, but they're like a 175-page novella or something like that. But Arcanum Unbound has everything but Dawnshard in terms of short fiction within the Cosmere, and it's a very good book in terms of telling you, don't read this till this will spoil this. So you can trust the book in that regard, but it has one on a planet with these cool magical birds that I really like. I think it's the Sixth of Dusk. And it has another one I think it's called Shadows of Silence, that is fascinating for one of the planes of the Cosmere, but also just like a really fun, creepy story. All of those are in Arcanum Unbound, including Edgedancer, Emperor's Souls. I think there's like a written version of White Sand. I've never read it. I don't know what to do with White Sand. We're not talking about White Sand today. I think there's going to be a different version of the graphic novel one day for us. For now, I'm just ignoring it, but there's technically a thing in White Sand that's important for Rhythm of War. But it's not that important. But like, just know that there is a little stuff in White Sand that's important for the Cosmere, but I haven't really consumed it because it's like canon, but it's like weird canon. Anyways, so that's generally my recommendation for Cosmere stuff. Like I said, literally follow your heart. They're books. Do what you want. You're presumably an adult based off my analytics. That's who watches me. And these are my recommendations. This is what I think. My heart always says start with Elantris, because Elantris it just gets done dirty, I think. I mean, I have friends who have really not liked it. So, like, obviously it is not a book for everyone, but what book is, if I'm being honest? So that's it for this one. If you are excited for the Kickstarter next year, that's amazing. So am I. I got all of them. I'm not going to be talking about them on this channel, so I'm sorry, but I do know my friend Michael Nip has been doing, like, looking into the things, so I will post his first video to the first secret that's been revealed in the description. If you want to find a channel to be like, ooh, we're going to talk about all the reveals together, I think you should go his way. And otherwise, if you want to leave an emoji, leave like a galaxy thing, because we've been talking about like multiverses and galaxy. That emoji would be wonderful. Let me know if you have any questions that I have not answered in this video. Please no spoilers in the comments, obviously. If you spoil something, I'm just deleting it. This is a safe space for anyone, because presumably people who click on this video have not read Sanderson yet. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!